ISIS bride sentenced to death. In a landmark ruling on July 10th, 2024, an Iraqi court sentenced one of ISIS leaders, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's wives, to death for her alleged complicity in crimes committed by the Islamic State against Yazidi women. The defendant, identified as Asma Mohammed, was charged with, quote, detaining Yazidi women in her home and facilitating their kidnappings by ISIS in the Sinjar district. This verdict comes after nearly a decade after ISIS's genocidal campaign against the Yazidi minority in northern Iraq, which resulted in thousands of deaths and widespread systematic sexual abuse. While the ruling represents a step towards justice for Yazidi survivors, it has also reignited debates about due process in Iraqi terrorism trials. Um, the case underscores the ongoing struggle to balance accountability for ISIS crimes with adherence to international rights standards as Iraq grapples with the aftermath of the Islamic State's reign of terror. I thought that this was important to cover because I don't know, I feel like people kind of treat the Yazidi genocide just as something in the rearview mirror, where like the impact of it is still being felt every day to this day. And there's an ongoing fight for accountability towards this genocide that happened like barely 10 years ago. But Armin, what's your initial reaction to this?
Yeah, I mean, I have no sympathy for this person who was selling Yazidi women as slaves. She was part of that. I mean, very likely, she was part of that. So I have no sympathy for her. But as good liberals as we are, not for sympathetic reasons, but for um, pragmatic reasons, we also have to mention every time that we're against capital punishment and we are for due process and your people having the right to defend themselves in the court of law with access to lawyers that could defend them legally, even if they are the worst of all human beings, right? So I just want to mention that by principle, these are the principles that we support, even for the worst of humanity. I mean, we're looking at the worst of humanity, and if you don't support these principles and rights for the worst of humanity, then you are not supporting them at all. So, yeah, I'm against her execution. I'm against her being sentenced to death as a matter of pragmatism, as a matter of standing for what works, not because I have any sympathy for her. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a question though. I mean, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that part of your personal disagreement with the death penalty comes from a empirical standpoint,
Hmm.
partially being that there's not evidence that the death penalty is effective in deterring crime. Okay, that's one thing. I believe part of your position against the death penalty is also more principled. Now you can correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm curious to what extent you believe this in absolutes. So, for example, would you have been against the results of the Nuremberg trials, which resulted in many people being executed for their crimes against humanity and their role within the Nazi regime?
Yeah, I mean, it's it would be naive to try to apply what works now to something even to something after World War II, right? But if it was happening again today, yes, I would be against it, right? I would be against. I mean, here's the thing: if we can show as a way to move to a better society where we don't have executions, the death penalty, there are some steps that we need to first take to get there. You can't get there right away. That is too naive to think that you could jump to it. and society have to go through a couple of steps before it could get there. And one necessary step is to, for example, do an execution here. Then I'm not. I'm a consequentialist. So if I can see the consequences are good, I will accept that. Right. So for example, if the Iranian regime is toppled, right, and many people want thousands of executions of mullahs left and right, and some people are saying like, no, we should be a better country right now. We're not the Islamic, we don't have the Islamic Republic as a government. The Islamic Republic, when it first came to power, it started with a whole bunch of executions. And when you grow a government with blood, it will end up continuing to be like that. So we should have no executions, right? But then that no execution position might make people so angry that will destabilize the society, and maybe everything will fall apart and break apart, right? So I might be convinced to say that, listen, we'll give you one last execution, and it would be a symbolic execution to say that this is the day that we will have no other executions after. Just like what happened in Romania. When they executed their dictator, it was marked as their last execution and no other executions after. If I could make satisfy all the angry people. I mean, if I see if it's more if they're still coming at me and the whole thing could break apart, I'm like, okay, we'll give you 10 executions, right? But again, I'm willing to give up my principles if the principles are not serving us. If the whole society is going to break apart because we're holding to our principles, what the whole point is that we're holding the principles anyway. The
Mm.
principle we're holding these principles for improving the well-being of society. So I would be in favor of telling society that, hey, Khamenei, we will execute Khamenei, for example, but this is it. This we are giving you this, and this will be a symbolic last execution in the history of this country. After that, we have to grow up. We should become a civilized country, and civilized countries do not execute. So that's what I would do. So again, I'm not going to have no exceptions. You know what I mean? I'm not a principalist. I'm a consequentialist.
Yeah, for me it's difficult because in general I'm against the death penalty for a variety of reasons. I especially think that the death penalty should be abolished within the United States. However, I do also believe that the matter of reconciliation within a nation after it has experienced the gravest of crimes against humanity, against its own citizens, that now have to continue to live together and move on in its own way. There has to be some semblance of a felt sense of justice and accountability for those people to move forward, now living together within a new framework. And that reconciliation is extremely messy and extremely complicated. And this was a huge issue, as we already saw before in the history of Iraq after the fall of Saddam, especially considering the way in which, to quote, what's his name, Kanan Makia, he constructed a republic of fear that mandated that citizens and children report on each other, and it created, a total submersive state of surveillance and torture. And then when he's removed, how do you go forward and trust your neighbor again? Th- that problem of reconciliation is extremely fraught and messy. Nations like Germany, for example, have had to go through it. And now, obviously, the issue of ISIS is a different than the fall of Saddam, but it's still a very difficult matter of how do we reconcile and feel that there is actually some accountability for the horrors that were inflicted upon each other and then now move forward living together as a new nation under a new framework, hopefully influenced by these principles that we promote on this channel. You know what I mean? And part of me wonders, despite my general opposition to the death penalty, if sometimes it might be required in situations such as this for this a felt reconciliation of a nation. This is just something I've been thinking about recently. It's
If
it's
it's
very tricky.
required, if it's required, it will show that it's required by a heavy cost in the form of instability to the point of breaking a society if you do not execute. Okay. And I think that we cannot force a value upon a people. I do think that people who are living a higher, a more advanced, have better culture, are more civilized. Those are people who are able to move on, even with the most tragic of events happening. If that person has just been given life in prison, like they do not require, in more advanced, more civilized societies, they do not need to see blood for them to be able to recover and to move on, right? But if a society is not in that position, so much so that if you do not give them that, the level of anger and dissatisfaction would be a threat to society as a whole, then for pragmatic reasons, I understand why we cannot wish no capital punishment upon that for that nation, because we cannot forcefully modernize a society. But for me to say I'm against or for something, I have to see that cost. If you think that the society needs this to move on, I need to see that they need it so much, that so much that the society will have a much higher cost, um, will suffer a much heavier cost than the cost associated with not having these better principles. And I don't see it in the example of the story. Like, I don't see Iraq, for example, society. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. If you're Iraqi, let me know in the live chat. Being outraged to the point of destabilizing the nation if this woman got life in prison instead of execution. I don't know
But
if,
how are you supposed to
yeah.
make that calculation until it's already too late?
You don't need to make a calculation because there's nobody making these. This is this is organically happens. A society that because the fact that it's happening, it's a product. It's not certain people intelligently making these decisions. This is the system making a decision because of the cost associated with something or its ability to do something. You know, it's what is happening is probably the most rational thing because it's happening. You know, Hegel said what is actual is rational and what is rational is actual, meaning that what could happen, what is the best thing that could happen is happening because this is the only anyways, I'm not going to get into Hegelian philosophy here, but I'm saying, like, you don't need to make the calculation because society as a system is making that calculation naturally, organically itself.
Uh, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Well, yeah, we can't get too much deeper into that.
Yes.
Let us go to the super chats. Arjun gave a super chat saying Syria and Iraq are turning out to be liberal paradises along with Israel and the Middle East. Good for them. I'm assuming this is
Huh?
ironic. I don't
Yes.
know.
I, I don't see
Um,
it.
Sid gave a super chat saying, I doubt Republicans can win elections unless groups like Indian Americans, Jews, Middle East Christians move Republican, which may happen in a few years as they don't have the scope of growth in the Democratic Party.
Maybe.
I'm
I
not sure
mean,
on
you're
what
just
basis you're I don't how much of a population share is I mean, Indian Americans maybe no, they need to target Latino voters the most. Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's,
I'm gonna be
you
honest.
know,
I don't. Jews maybe, Middle East Christians and Indian Americans. Indian Americans more so. They are more so nowadays. Middle East Christians, I don't see as particularly
I don't think
politically
these demographics are
expedient.
set. I
Yeah.
think you cannot make, you have these demographics. I think people are proven to be way more independent in their choice than, people are becoming more individualists, right? Because we assume, like, imagine how people assume black people vote for against Trump, and now black people are voting for Trump. People assume Latino vote against Trump, and now Latino people are voting for Trump. So judge it's becoming, it's a good thing that it's becoming more and more difficult to judge the way people vote based on their ethnic identity or their place of origin, and because we don't want people to be this tribal, this ethnically tribal, right? So judging the results of elections, if judging the results of election becomes more difficult based on people's ethnic identity, that means we're moving away from homogeneous homogeneously minded ethnic identities, which is a good sign of progress, I think. Does that make sense?
Um. Oh, and he gave another super chat saying the death penalty should be given in unique cases like Bin Laden and all, because terror groups will try to free them. Life in prisons is way worse than the death penalty. Life in certain prisons
Yeah.
is worse than the death penalty.
Yeah, the point is not what's worse for them. The point is what's best serves society. And I agree there are exceptions. Yeah. The whole point of the justice system, first of all, for Bin Laden, you don't need the justice system. You take him out during the operation. But if he was arrested, the whole if he was put in, if it was supposed to be judged in a justice system, what we should support, the policies of the justice system we should support, which should not be based on what satisfies our desire for revenge. What most strongly satisfies our desire for revenge, that should not be the question. The question should be, what is the punishment that is the most likely to bring peace, stability, and security to highest number of people? That's the point of the justice system, not to satisfy your sense of desire for revenge.
Well, that actually brings us to the end of our show today.
Yes, I think I'm eager to go see what the hell just happened. Who's going to be This is the first time in the history of United States that somebody won the electoral votes, and now it's not going to be the candidate. History is being made, guys, right now. So the attempted assassination on Trump, as crazy and historic that was, it was not the first time, but this is the first time. This is the first time. This is Both of them were historic events, but this one is more unique. Actually, surprisingly, the attempted assassination on the presidential candidate was not the unique. Actually, that was unique because the other assassinations were on presidents, not presidential candidates. So both of them are historically unique.
Oh, we
We
just
got
got
two
two
more
more
super
super chats.
chats. Yes, maybe I
Arjun
should
gave a
rant more because. Yeah, go on.
gave a super chat saying if death penalty is abolished, encounters will increase. I don't know what you mean by encounters.
Citation needed.
Citation needed. There's a large body
Yeah.
of evidence to show that the death penalty does not deter crime. Um, Sid Dave gave a super chat saying, Armin and Susanna, do you think white people should allow themselves to become a minority in their nations? I think demographic anxiety drives Trump in the US, and I understand why someone would feel that way. Personally, I was actually ranting to my boyfriend about this the other day. I think it is stupid that there are many people, typically white people, right-leaning white people, that have this anxiety about demographic replacement. And let me elaborate as to why. If you expect immigrants to come to your country and suddenly within the span of one generation drop their fertility rates like a rock because the so-called white demographic has decided to do so and live that way, that's stupid and obscene. Why would we ever expect that? Okay, like there are many, especially in Europe and places like Spain, where they have decided to just, not decided literally, but there is a trend within society that has decided that people are just not going to reproduce at replacement rate. Why would we ever expect that people would immigrate to a country and do the same thing? That doesn't make sense to me. How in the world only a stupid person would blame immigrants for something like that? Why would we ever? Because this is part of a longer thing that I've been thinking about, because there's many people that complain for many good reasons about certain immigrant groups not integrating and not assimilating into certain values and trends of the dominant society. We need to recognize that there are some trends that are not worth assimilating into. A prime example would be the number of children born outside of wedlock, outside of marriage. That's a trend that is not worth assimilating into. That's not a good thing. So if people really have, I don't want to hear people complaining about this unless they're actually focused on like raising the next generation themselves. I think I don't know. It just really that gets under my skin. I'm like, why would you ever expect that a new group of people would come to a country and decide to do something as maladjusted as not like reproducing that replacement rate? That's not a good behavior to adopt, and like why would you just expect that they be follow that same like bad behavior essentially?
Okay,
It
let
doesn't
me
make
get in
sense to me.
here
So
because
if you want to
I got
argue
your
about
point.
yeah, I mean, there are some things that you can add to color the situation where you could talk about, okay, maybe the quote unquote native population has to, give so much of their income into funding the welfare state, and then the welfare state disproportionately benefits people that are newcomers, and then they have then are then subsidized and then they have more children than the actual quote unquote native population can have, then we can start to dig into that, and if there's evidence for that, and then how the complications of that, so on and so forth. But in terms of just trends and values within society that are pushing people to not have more kids, because there are people that value not having children or not having many children and so on and so forth for many different reasons, for many different economic influences. I don't know. I think it's kind of misguided and weird to blame new
Got it.
people for not adopting
You said that.
bad behaviors. Okay.
Okay, let me get in. Let me get in. I've been waiting for a long time. Um, I don't think people understand why people have less kids, and also I don't understand why people should make any decisions based on the most dumbest of all identities, which is your ethnic identity. Right? People make
Facts.
decisions based on what works for them, not based on what skin color they have or based on what ethnic group they belong to. Right? You look at your life, you make decisions on what best suits your individual freaking life. Right? Also, people having more or less children is less of a cultural. I'm not saying not a cultural. I'm saying less. Please don't come at me like, oh no, I mean culture has an influence. I didn't say it doesn't have an influence. Pay attention to my words. Is less based on cultural forces. It's mostly based on economic forces. People who are better off, more economically stable, will have less children. Susie, I wish you were here because I wanted to see what you think about this.
I'm just gonna go pee real quick. I'll be right back.
All right. Let me just put you down because you're not here. I'm going to take the full screen. But, and there's no convincing people. Everyone is trying that. People are like, let's convince white people to have more children. What are you talking about? Go see how much Japan has been successful in convincing people. Go and see how much South Korea has been successful at convincing people. Go see how much of these economic incentives, which is so much smaller than the bigger change in the structure of how economics and society works, it has fundamentally changed so much. We're going through a major, fourth industrial revolution right now, and you want to incentivize people by giving them money to have kids or whatever, or just like the Republicans, some of them think that they should just tell white people to have more babies, as if that would work. I have the economic realities that I'm dealing with as an individual is so much more powerful than any ideology that you want to spread about, oh, white anti-white genocide. Like, what the hell does that even mean? So when you say, do you think white people should allow themselves, anytime you say white people should, brown people should, purple people should, yellow people should, orange people should, green people should, the answer is probably no. Why should anybody do anything based on the color of their skin? That doesn't make any sense. Why do they even have, why are they even taking their ethnic identity so seriously? For one, so to for them to want to have to make a decision about based on their ethnic identity, that's already ridiculous. But why would they even be upset about this ethnic identity, this ethnicity being a minority, unless it's becoming a minority with force or genocide? That's the only time. There's only two excuses for you to take your ethnic identity seriously, or for you to care about the number of people within your ethnicity. The only time that is excusable for you to take your ethnic identity seriously is if people are targeting that ethnic identity and are trying to discriminate, hate, or eliminate it. Okay, because your ethnic identity doesn't matter unless some racist people are making it matter and you are forced in a defensive position. That's the only time that it's justified to take an ethnic identity seriously. And the only time you need to care about the numbers of people within an ethnic identity, within an ethnicity, or I don't know, race or color, or whatever you want to call it. I know these are different. Is when people are trying to eliminate you by force, not because you're falling in love with somebody and having a freaking baby with them. What is that? Why would you care about not even that ethnic identity never existing if it's through just marriage and voluntarily procreation and people falling in love with each other? Why is that an issue? Imagine if we had purple people and purple people fell in love with red people and they just married each other until everyone is purple. What is the problem with that? If we were taking out blue people and trying to eliminate them from society by force or by genocide, that is a tragic elimination of blue people. But if blue people are going to one day be no more because they just had sex with red people and now everyone is purple, that is not a tragedy. What has been lost to society? Tell me, what has been lost to society? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the fact that I mean, it's complicated. There are many situations in which people would like to be having more children. There are economic forces, and we can talk about the multitude of economic forces that are influencing people to not follow through with that desire, which is a problem that is arising in many nations. Um, but in many ways, it is voluntary.
Yes. If it's
Um,
voluntarily, it's fine.
I had another point I wanted to add because you made a really good point, and now I don't remember it. Maybe it'll come back to
We
me.
should move on anyways because I want to go see what the hell is happening with Biden. So let's do the super
Yeah.
chats. And
Unicorn gave a super chat just saying, "Thanks as always, Susan Armin." Well, thank you for supporting the show, Unicorn. Um,
thank you.
Arjun, oh, I think this might have been the point I wanted to make. Arjun gave a super chat saying, "Would Armin support the ultra conservatives having 10 kids if they think it's right for them, even though it's contributing to an already high global population. The whole idea of global overpopulation is a complete psyop. It's fake. It's not a problem. It's a complete psyop. It's bullshit. We
Yes.
actually have an underpopulation problem.
Except in certain situations, there are some
Yeah.
places, some places on this planet that has an overpopulation problem, but most of this planet has an underpopulation problem, not an overpopulation. This is a myth. And again, a lot of people who thought that believe, a lot of politicians who believe that we have an overpopulation problem are now regretting all the policies that were they're trying to quickly go backwards on everything that they did, that they damaged their societies by trying to reduce the growth of population, to reduce the growth of the population rate. So yes, so every most places on this planet is suffering from underpopulation, not overpopulation. But go on, next one.
Um Okay, Uriel Polak gave a super chat saying, "How long before the children of Muslims catch on and become apostates in mass?" In certain countries, we're already seeing this trend. In the United States, the ex-Muslims of North America had a study that showed what it's happening at a rate of 1 in 4. 1 in 4 Muslims in the United
Yes,
States
one
are
in
second
the United
generations
States.
apostatize, something like that.
Yes. How long before we? Yeah, it's already happening. It depends on. You need to be more specific. What level are you expecting? Because what you're saying, en masse, is already happening, but depends on what you mean by different level. Yeah, it's already happening. We're already there. Does en masse
Um,
mean like all of them more than 50%, or it just means a high number?
I don't know. Arjun is saying by encounter, I meant extrajudicial killing. So, what was your comment? If you abolish
So yeah,
death
same
penalty at a
response as
high,
before.
yeah, exactly. What you're
Same
saying is
response
still
as before.
not
Citation needed.
citation needed, evidence to the contrary.
Right.
um, Sid Dave gave a super chat saying ethnic and cultural identity is a reality, whether it is a good thing or not. Sorry, the reading this lingo is hard. There are common civilizational values that people have. Would immigrants share
Why are you writing like this?
the
This
respect
sound
for founding fathers than a white person? Would immigrants share the I think would immigrants I think he meant to say would
okay. I get it.
immigrants
Let
share
me
the
answer.
same respect for founding fathers that a white person has?
I will answer it. Okay. So here's the
This
thing.
is
Yes,
so
I
difficult to
know.
read.
So he's saying that would an immigrant that is not white share the same? Would they respect the founding father, like an American citizen, right, who is not white? Would they respect the founding fathers when they all are freaking white, right? So your second question actually relates to your first one, right? So yes, ethnic and cultural identity are a reality. I didn't say they're not. I say that we benefit if they become less of a reality. And to answer your second question, yes, the more ethnic identities become less. First of all, cultural identity is no. I have no problem with cultural identities. Why? Why did you mix them together? Ethnic identities is what I have a problem with. Cultural identities, I don't have a problem with cultural identities. I think they're a good thing. But if you reduce, because cultural identity is something that you could change regardless of who you are and where you were born. You could have, you could be a black person that respects the founding fathers because you have a liberal culture, right? You could value what they have done to make a great country. As an American, you could value what they have done to make such a powerful nation with such a great country that you are proud citizens of, because you have adopted a liberal culture. So that, yeah, there you go. And the less, in fact, the less important ethnic identity becomes, the more powerful the cultural identity becomes. The more likely it is that a black person could find respect for the founding fathers
A
of
black
America.
person is not an immigrant.
No, I know, but I didn't say that. Why are you putting words in my mouth? He is talking about, he's highlighting the difference. In fact, that's a good that actually confirms my point, right? And a black American is fully American regardless of with all the difference with the huge difference in skin color with the founding fathers. So given that a black American is fully American and could respect the founding fathers, why would a newly immigrant not be able to find the same respect? Because you're highlighting ethnic identity as the reason why you wouldn't find that respect. But we have that ethnic identity as different ethnic identities among people who are already American. So if it doesn't stop them, why should it stop the new immigrant that is coming here to America? They could even become American. And in fact, here's the thing: immigrants that are very eager, legal immigrants who are very eager to come to America. So I know illegal immigrants might not have any respect for the founding fathers of America, but you will find actually more respect and more appreciation and more enthusiasm for American values and American culture and American founding fathers and American history among legal immigrants, because they're coming to a country that they love and they respect and they want to be a citizen of. So the level of respect among them, with whatever ethnic identity that they have, for these values and these people is on average more. Again, I'm not saying there are no exceptions, but you will find the disrespect among illegal immigrants. But among legal immigrants, you could usually see a lot of enthusiasm for the values of the countries that they're migrating to.
There are some
Does that make
immigrant
sense?
groups in the United States that are like so freaking patriotic. I'm like, damn, you guys maybe need to calm down a little bit.
Right.
But I love it. Like, particularly, I'm thinking the first thing that comes to my mind is there's like a subsection of the Cuban American community that goes so
Right.
freaking hardcore for the United States.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm
Then
like, you
doesn't
guys
matter.
have
Yes.
zero chill, but then again, that's part of being an American is having zero chill. We do everything bigger, okay? It's part of how we go. It's just everything bigger.
America, more than any country, has proven that we could move beyond ethnic identities. More than any country. In fact, America introduced this idea. America revolutionized the whole world by showing that you do not have your ethnic identity does not have any influence on how American you are.
Gasian American gave a super chat saying, "My childhood propaganda celebrated immigrants and how immigrants built this country. I respect the how this is going to be hard for me to pronounce. How then no Sani Confederacy. I'm assuming you meant more than those slave owners. And this confederacy is a like a union of several native tribes, particularly I believe from like Iroquois groups."
Susie, you sent me a clip recently of Reagan making this point that I just made. I can't show it because
There's
it has
music.
music on it. Yes, but we should find at some point. I'm gonna the what he said without the music and show it every time. That was such a powerful quote. What did he say? Let me just. It was such a
Basically that you can go to France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go to Japan, but you cannot become Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to America and be an American. You don't have to be
right.
born in America to be an American.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I should. He said it so well. We should find it
it
and play
reminded
it for.
there's this famous rant that the comedian Joey Diaz went on, and he's like, "You don't have to be born in America to be an American. It's a state of mind."
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
Cajun is saying by slave owners, I do mean our founding fathers. Okay, but there are also many founding fathers that were not slave owners and were abolitionist activists. So
No.
that
Here's
needs to
the
be acknowledged.
no, 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 no. I do not fault any of the founding fathers for being slave owners. Okay. Why? because they were the people who were paving the way in making people be seen as equal within the law. Excuse me if they didn't radically break and change the entire system overnight. They were, when it comes to people being equal, they were the founding fathers of the United States. They were far ahead of everyone else. So I'm sorry if they weren't where you are today. They were ahead of everyone else when it comes to their philosophy and what they were teaching about people, humans being treated equal. I care about the fact that they were ahead of other people rather than us now being ahead of where they were.
Okay. Sid gave another super chat saying whites who came before World War II, they mixed up with each other, so original German French identities went away. That's not always the case. Um, Immigrants today are very much in touch with their original country. Assimilation takes time. Yeah, I don't. This
Wait,
is a
what did you
fact. I'm.
came before?
There are
To,
people who
so
have
let me
been
see.
here in America for generations that still have a very felt sense of identity with their country of origin. Look at the Irish American community
It's
in
fine
America.
to
Look at
be.
the Italian American community in America. Like, it's
No,
insane.
you don't.
Like,
Assimilation does not require you not to be in touch with the culture of where you come from. In fact, part of what make United States great was the fact that it celebrated that you're bringing all of this with you here. You only need to filter out bad culture. You don't need to filter out different culture. You could bring in all the culture that you want with you, as long as it's not wife beating, as long as it's not um, genital mutilation, as long as it's not disrespect for the rule of law and democracy, as long as it's not anti-freedom of speech. Bring in your dance, bring in your fashion, bring in your food. Just don't bring your freaking wife. Don't bring your Islam. How about that? Okay, don't bring Islam. Bring if you want to be proud of being an Irish American as much as you want. In fact, we're more of an America because you're proud Irish American. Bring all the Irish stuff that you want with you. Just don't bring Islam. Just don't bring toxic shit with you.
um, Sid is saying founding fathers of all countries before the 20th century were slave owners. Notable, I'm assuming you mean notably Muhammad from Arabia, Genghis Khan from Mongolia, Ottomans from in Turkey. Guys, look, slavery has been a fixture of American civilization. Excuse me, not American civilization, human civilization since time immemorial, essentially. That's not exactly notable. What is notable is his absence. That absence
Mm.
comes in many different forms. It happens in many different ways. It evolves over time.
We don't, yeah. People focus on the fact that America had slavery. They don't focus on the fact that America was one of the leading countries in not having. I mean, to be fair to the UK, they were ahead of the United States, but still, US was one of the leading countries to get rid of it. So
Well, and
good job, US.
it is, if we're going to really be honest, it's many of the values that evolved out of the West that then pushed and forced, in many cases, the abolishment of slavery in the rest of the world. And of course, it still
Right.
occurs in many different forms.
Yes. Okay, guys, let's go see what happened to Biden and stuff. Okay, I'm eager to go follow the news on this. This is crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
Armin is about
Crazy
to
stuff.
go data
Oh,
dump
we
in
got
his
another
brain.
super chat. We got another super chat. Okay, let's do this one,
Got
and
another
then no
super
more
chat
super
from
chats.
Sid Dave saying India is actually a good example of an EU like multi ethnic, multi religious country. Nobody is a majority in India. Hindus in the north are different from Hindus in the south, are as Irish are from Russians. It's from
Okay.
Indians in the north are as different from Hindus in the south as Irish are
Okay.
from Russians. Well, especially in terms of the
All right.
language diversity in India.
Okay. Let's thank you for the super chats, but no more super chats. I want to go see what the hell's happening with Biden. Okay, but thank you. We do appreciate the super chat. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you. Don't forget to like the stream. Don't forget to leave a comment after the show is over. Don't forget to let people know to come subscribe to Atheist Republic on YouTube. Go tell your friends and your enemies. And also, yeah, that's it. That's all you need to do. Okay. None of what I mentioned costs you any money, and it helps us grow. Do you know who makes the most amazing, gorgeous, and other adjectives that I can't use here on YouTube, blasphemous art ever? We do. And for some reason, we are giving it away for free. Download them now using the link in the description before we change our mind.